The morning sunlight streaming through the kitchen window gently illuminated the ingredients lined up on the counter. Flour, eggs, vanilla extract. Today was a special day, so I wanted everything to be perfect. Michael's birthday. 7 years of marriage, and I'd never once missed the tradition of making him a homemade cake. I intended to keep it going this year too. I heard small footsteps coming down the stairs. It was Sophia. My daughter, who had just turned 5, woke up at this time every morning and came to me. Still in her pajamas, rubbing her sleepy eyes, she came into the kitchen, and I picked her up. "It's Daddy's birthday today," I whispered, and Sophia's eyes lit up. "Let's make a cake together." My daughter nodded happily and grabbed the edge of my apron with her small hands. Our mornings as a family of 3 were always peaceful. Michael would make coffee, I'd prepare breakfast, and Sophia would set the table. Simple, ordinary days. But those unremarkable moments were irreplaceable to me. When I worked as a nurse, I was constantly pressed for time. Even coming home from night shifts, I couldn't sleep thinking about the next one. Sometimes I felt crushed by the weight of responsibility for patients' lives. But after I got pregnant with Sophia, I quit my job. I chose time with my family. I never once regretted that choice. Michael works at an architecture firm. He's an excellent architect entrusted with major projects, spends weekends playing with our daughter at the park, and listens to me with a smile at night. He was the ideal husband. As I mixed the cake batter with Sophia, I thought about Michael's recent behavior. He'd been coming home later than usual. He came home looking tired more often. When I asked if everything was okay, he said he was just busy with a big project. But there was something shadowy in his eyes, as if he were hiding something. I wanted to think it was my imagination. We were a happy family. Michael loved me and cherished Sophia. He was just busy with work. That's what I told myself. When I put the cake in the oven, a sweet aroma filled the kitchen. Sophia's eyes sparkled as she asked, "Will Daddy be happy?" "Of course," I answered. "It's the most delicious cake in the world." In the afternoon, Michael called. He said he'd be able to leave on time today. His voice sounded cheerful, but something felt forced about it. The first time I felt something was off was about a month ago. That day, Michael left the house barely touching his breakfast. Usually he'd play with Sophia before leaving for work, but that morning he kept checking the clock, seeming restless. When I asked if he was okay, he smiled hastily. "Yeah, I'm fine. I just have a meeting first thing this morning." But the smile didn't reach his eyes. After that, Michael came home later and later. He used to come home at 6 in the evening, but recently it wasn't unusual for him to come home at 8 or 9. When I asked if it was a big project, he would just nod vaguely. He never gave me any specific details. One evening when Michael came home, his eyes were red and swollen. I thought he might have caught a cold, but he insisted nothing was wrong. As I watched his back while he went to shower, a small anxiety sprouted in my chest. It was around that time he started hiding his cell phone. He used to leave it casually on the dining table, but lately it was always in his pocket. Even when calls came in, he wouldn't answer in front of me. He'd get up to go to the bathroom and talk there. In a low voice, as if consulting with someone about something. I knew I shouldn't listen, but I found myself straining my ears. But Michael's voice was too quiet to make out what he was saying. I just knew for certain that he was dealing with some serious problem. Was it about work? Or a health issue? Maybe there was something he couldn't tell me. Various possibilities ran through my mind. But I didn't want to consider the worst possibility. The possibility of another woman. No, Michael would never do that. For 7 years, he'd been a faithful husband. There were no lies in our marriage. That's what I wanted to believe. But the doubt grew day by day. One afternoon, I got a call from Michael's company. When I picked up, I heard a young woman's voice. "Is this Emily Anderson?" "Yes," I answered, and the person on the other end continued in a somewhat confused tone. Michael left early again today. Is he not feeling well?" I froze. Left early. Michael hadn't told me anything about that. Rather, he'd been saying he was working overtime lately. "No, he's fine," I answered, hiding my distress. "I think he's just tired." "Thank you." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Michael had been lying. Not overtime, he'd been leaving early. So where was he and what was he doing during that time? That night, Michael came home past 10. As he said, "I'm home," with a tired face, I couldn't ask him anything. That I'd gotten a call from his company, that I knew he'd been leaving early. If I said something, would he explain? Or would he lie again? The credit card statement arrived at the end of that week. I took it from the mailbox and opened it casually, then my eyes caught on one item. Kids World, $200. It was a children's clothing specialty store. I always bought Sophia's clothes. I'd never heard of Michael buying children's clothes alone. And $200. What on earth had he bought? For whom? My chest tightened. Could Michael have another family? Another woman and another child? My head denied it, but somewhere in my heart, I couldn't completely rule out that possibility. It was a few days later that Sophia said something. At night, as I was putting my daughter to bed, Sophia whispered in a small voice. "Mommy, Daddy cries sometimes." "What?" I asked back. "Daddy's crying." "When?" "At night," my daughter answered. "In his room, alone." Sophia got up to get water and saw. "Is Daddy sad?" I hugged my daughter. "It's okay, Daddy's just a little tired." But my heart was in turmoil. Michael was crying alone. What was he suffering from? And why wouldn't he tell me? The next day, I went into Michael's study. I usually respected his privacy and avoided going in, but I couldn't stand it anymore. When I opened the desk drawer, there was nothing suspicious. Papers, pens, sticky notes. All perfectly ordinary things. But in the bottom drawer, there was a single small photograph. An old photo, faded. A young woman in the picture. Was it Michael's ex-wife? He'd told me he'd been married once before we married. But he hadn't told me the details. He'd only said there were no children. The woman in the photo had a kind smile. Did Michael still love this person? Or was there another reason he kept the photo? I put the photo back where I found it and left the study. I was tired of doubting. But I was afraid to know the truth. And then Michael's birthday arrived. In the morning, he showed me a slight smile. When Sophia sang, "Happy Birthday," he picked up our daughter and kissed her cheek. That sight was the gentle daddy he always was. But I knew that behind his smile, something heavy was hidden. That's why I suggested to Sophia, "Let's go meet Daddy at work. Let's surprise him." Maybe that would be some kind of trigger. A trigger for him to tell me what he was carrying. Carrying the cake box, we waited in front of the office. And we saw Michael come out of the building. But he didn't head toward the station. He walked in the opposite direction, with his back to us. For a moment, I thought about calling out to him. But something stopped me. Intuition. If I followed him, I'd learn the truth. That's what I felt. "Sophia, be quiet," I whispered to my daughter. "We're going to follow Daddy." My daughter looked puzzled but nodded. Still holding the cake box, we began following Michael. He was walking quickly. Several times he seemed about to look back, but we hid. After walking for about 10 minutes, Michael stopped in front of a building. It was a hospital. St. Joseph Children's Hospital. That's what was written in white letters on a blue sign. Michael took a deep breath and went into the building. My heart was pounding. A children's hospital. Why was he here? And the credit card statement came back to my mind. Kids' World. Children's clothes. Could it be? With trembling hands, I held Sophia's hand and headed toward the hospital entrance. The automatic doors opened, and the smell of disinfectant hit my nose. It was a familiar smell. Memories from when I worked as a nurse came back. But now, I didn't have time to dwell on those memories. I was about to ask the woman at reception if someone named Michael Anderson had come in, but I held back. Instead, I started walking down the hallway to find where Michael had gone. Looking at the elevator display, it seemed he'd gone to the 4th floor. We also got on the elevator and pressed the button for the 4th floor. When the doors opened, there was a sign that said Pediatric Hematology Oncology. Hematology Oncology. My feet stopped. At the end of the hallway, I could see a hospital room with glass windows. And inside, there was Michael's figure. Time seemed to stop. The scene visible through the glass window didn't seem real. In the hospital room, Michael was gently holding a girl about 7 years old. The girl had no hair on her head, and her small body was dressed in a hospital gown. And 4 tube was connected to her arm. Michael's shoulders were shaking. It took a few seconds to realize he was crying. His hand was stroking the girl's back, and he seemed to be whispering something. The girl was also clinging to him. Next to me, Sophia made a small sound. Daddy. My daughter had also noticed her father. But I couldn't stop her. I couldn't move. Why? Only that word repeated in my head. Why is Michael holding this child? Who is this child? Why is she in the Pediatric Hematology Oncology ward? The credit card statement. Children's clothes. Leaving early. The crying. All the fragments connected to one possibility. But I didn't want to acknowledge that possibility. If I acknowledged it, our 7 years would crumble. Then the hospital room door opened. A nurse came out and noticed us. Are you here for a visit?" she asked. I couldn't answer anything. At the nurse's voice, Michael turned around. And he saw us. I could see the color draining from Michael's face. His eyes widened and his mouth opened slightly. Emily, the wordless word escaped from his lips. I took a step toward the hospital room. My legs were shaking. Sophia gripped my hand tightly. The cake box tilted slightly between us. Michael separated from the girl and walked toward us. His eyes were red, and there were tear tracks on his cheeks. "Wait, Emily, it's not," he tried to say. But I shook my head. It is. I knew that this girl was someone special to Michael. That he'd been coming here every day. That he'd been lying to me to come see her. "Who is this child?" I asked. My voice was surprisingly calm. But inside, a storm was raging. Michael couldn't answer. He just stared at me. In those eyes were suffering, fear, and some other emotion. A pleading gaze, seeking forgiveness. From inside the hospital room, I heard a small voice. "Daddy." The girl was calling Michael. With that one word, my world collapsed. Daddy. This child called Michael Daddy. The strength left my hands and the cake box fell to the floor. There was a dull sound, then the sound of something collapsing inside the box. Sophia let out a small scream. But I couldn't pick up the box. Michael hurriedly picked up the box. "Emily, please, let me explain," he said. "But explain what?" "That you have another daughter. That you've been lying to me." Before we married, Michael had said. He'd had an ex-wife, but no children. But was that a lie? Or was this child born after that? Inside the hospital room, there was the sound of the girl coughing. The nurse rushed over and rubbed her back. Michael looked back at the hospital room with an anguished expression. "I have to go," he muttered. "Go," I said. My voice was surprisingly cold. "Go to this child. We'll be fine." I couldn't look at him. Instead, I picked up Sophia. My daughter looked at me with a confused face. "Mommy," she called in a small voice. "It's okay," I whispered to my daughter. But nothing was okay. Michael returned to the hospital room. He sat at the girl's bedside and held her small hand. The girl was breathing with difficulty, but when she saw Michael's face, she showed a slight smile. That sight squeezed my chest even more. How long did I stand there? I had no sense of time. The nurse considerately spoke to us several times, but I could barely respond. Eventually, the girl's breathing calmed down. Michael kissed her forehead and came out of the hospital room again. His eyes were bright red and he looked exhausted. "Let's talk," he said. "Emily, please. I'll tell you everything. So please, listen." I nodded. I had to listen. Even if the truth would devastate me. Michael led us to the hospital cafeteria. Sophia, still holding the cake box, looked anxiously between me and her father. "Are Mommy and Daddy fighting?" she asked in a small voice. "No," I answered. "We're just going to have a grown-up talk." The cafeteria was quiet. It was evening, and there were hardly any visitors. We sat at a window seat. I bought Sophia some juice and let her play at a seat a little away from us. Michael tried to open his mouth several times and hesitated. He seemed to be searching for words. I waited silently. I didn't rush him. I was prepared to wait as long as it took for him to start talking. "Emily," he finally began. "That child's name is Lily." Lily. Hearing that name, a dull pain ran through my heart. "She's my daughter," Michael continued. "My daughter with my ex-wife." "You said you didn't have children," I said. My voice was trembling. "I did," Michael acknowledged. "I lied. But there was a reason." "What reason could there be to hide a daughter's existence for 7 years?" I pressed. "What reason to keep lying to our family?" Michael covered his face. His shoulders were shaking. Unable to hold back, he began to cry. Curling his large body, crying while stifling his voice. I couldn't touch him. Couldn't comfort him, couldn't hold him. I just waited for him to calm down. Eventually, Michael raised his face. With red, swollen eyes, he looked at me. And he began to talk. "When my ex-wife Sarah was pregnant, we were happy," he said. "But at 8 months, she was in a traffic accident. Sarah didn't make it. But Lily was born by C-section. She was premature, but miraculously survived." I gasped. He'd had such a past. "Sarah's parents blamed me," Michael continued. "They said it was my fault for driving, that I killed Sarah. The accident wasn't my fault, but my in-laws wouldn't listen. And they took custody of Lily. It went to court. I lost." "Why?" I asked. "Because I was away from home a lot for work," he answered. "They judged I couldn't take care of a newborn. My in-laws said this: if you start a new family, you'll never see Lily again. If they found out I remarried, they'd revoke visitation rights too." I was speechless. Such blackmail. "That's why I couldn't tell you," Michael said. "I met you, fell in love, wanted to marry you. But if I did, I couldn't see Lily. So I lied. I said I didn't have children. And only a few times a month, only when my in-laws allowed it, I'd secretly go see Lily. But you've been coming every day recently, I pointed out. That's right, Michael nodded. A month ago, Lily was diagnosed with leukemia. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The doctor said they had to start treatment immediately. Even my in-laws allowed me to come every day. But I couldn't tell you. If I did, everything would fall apart. I stayed silent. Michael's words were spinning in my head. And today, Michael said. Lily's condition suddenly worsened. The company contacted me and I rushed to the hospital. Just then, the cafeteria door opened. A doctor in a white coat came in and looked around as if searching for us. When he spotted Michael, he approached. Mr. Anderson, the doctor said. Is your wife with you? That's good timing. I need to talk about the donor testing. The doctor's words stopped my thoughts. It took a few seconds to understand what he meant. Michael looked at the doctor in surprise. Doctor, he started to say. The doctor didn't seem to notice the tension between us. He pulled out a chair and sat down, spreading papers on the table. Lily's leukemia is difficult to cure completely with chemotherapy alone, he began explaining. She needs a bone marrow transplant. I gasped. Bone marrow transplant. When I worked as a nurse, I'd been present for that procedure many times. I knew well how difficult it was to find a donor and the risks of transplantation. We tested Mr. Anderson's HLA type, the doctor continued. Unfortunately, it's not compatible. If you have siblings, there might be a possibility. Michael shook his head. I'm an only child. Then would you consider having your wife or other family members tested? The doctor looked at me. Especially blood relatives would be preferable. The doctor thought I was Michael's wife. Lily's stepmother. But I had no relationship with her. No blood connection. Just a stranger. I tried to speak and choked on my words. I didn't know what to say. Doctor, Michael interrupted. Actually, my wife has no blood relation to Lily. The doctor showed a slightly confused expression. I see. Then what about the biological parents? Lily's mother has passed away, Michael answered. Her maternal grandparents are elderly and not in condition to be tested. The doctor reviewed the papers. Then we have no choice but to search the donor bank. However, it may take time to find a compatible donor. Considering Lily's condition, we want to perform the transplant as soon as possible. How much time do we have? Michael asked. His voice was trembling. The doctor answered with a serious expression. A few months, probably 3 to 6 months. If we don't find a compatible donor by then. He didn't finish. But the meaning was clear. Michael covered his face with his hands. His shoulders were shaking violently. Please, doctor, Michael said pleadingly. Isn't there any other way? The doctor shook his head. I'm sorry. What we can do now is search for a compatible donor and maintain Lily's strength. The doctor stood up, said to contact them immediately if anything came up, and left the cafeteria. We who remained were in a long silence. Sophia was at a distant seat, opening the cake box and looking inside. She had a sad face looking at the collapsed cake. I'll take the test, I said. My voice was surprisingly clear. Michael raised his face. What? He looked at me in a daze. I'll take the bone marrow donor test, I repeated. Maybe I'll be compatible. Emily, Michael said. But you and Lily have no blood relation. The possibility of being compatible is low, I said. I know. But it's not zero. It's worth trying. Why? Michael asked. I lied to you. I hid my daughter's existence for 7 years. You should be angry. You should blame me. So why? I looked at my hands. Memories from when I was a nurse came back. Days of working desperately to save lives. Patients' smiles. Families' tears. I worked to save lives, I said. After I had a child, I left that job. But the desire to help people hasn't disappeared. When I saw Lily in that hospital room, I knew. She needs help. I can't forgive you for lying. I'm hurt and I feel betrayed. But Lily has nothing to do with that. She's just a sick child. If I might be able to help her, I want to try. But, Michael said. This is my choice, I cut off his words. Not for you. For Lily. And for myself. Michael couldn't say anything. He just stared at me. In those eyes were gratitude, guilt, and hope mixed together. However, I added. When this is over, we're going to have a proper talk. Everything, from the beginning. About you and Lily, your ex-wife, your in-laws. No more secrets. You'll tell me everything. I understand, Michael nodded. I promise. I won't hide anything anymore. The next day, I was tested. They drew blood to check my HLA type. I was told it would take a week for results. During that time, I visited the hospital several times. To see Lily. At first, she was wary of me. Who are you? She asked in a small voice from her bed. I'm Emily, I answered. A friend of your daddy's. Friend, Lily repeated. Not Daddy's new wife. I was taken aback. She knew that Michael had remarried. But how? Grandma said, Lily continued. Daddy made a new family, so he forgot about me. That's not true, I said firmly. Daddy hasn't forgotten about you. Not once. He comes here every day, doesn't he? He loves you more than anyone. Lily looked at me. In those eyes were hope and anxiety mixed together. Really? Really, I answered. And I want to help you too. Why? Lily asked. We don't know each other. I held Lily's small hand. It was cold and thin. We're not strangers, I said. You're Daddy's daughter. That alone is reason enough. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, she said in a small voice. A week later, the test results came in. When the doctor called me and told me the results, I couldn't believe my ears. You're compatible, the doctor said. Not a perfect match, but at a level where transplantation is possible. This is truly a rare case. I leaned back in my chair. I couldn't believe it. I, with no blood relation, could be Lily's donor. When I called Michael, he was speechless. Really? He asked over and over. Is it really true, Emily? It's true, I answered. I can help Lily. On the other end of the phone, I could hear Michael breaking down crying. Thank you, he repeated again and again. Thank you, Emily. The transplant date was set. 1 month later. During that time, I got my health in order, and Lily continued treatment in preparation for the transplant. One day, while talking with Lily in her hospital room, she asked me, will Emily become my new mommy? I was at a loss for an answer. It depended on what happened to Michael's and my relationship. But explaining that to Lily was difficult. I don't know, I answered honestly. But whether I become your mommy or not, I'm on your side. Lily smiled. Weakly, but a real smile. I hope Emily becomes my new mommy, she said. Because you're kind. Those words warmed my heart. At the same time, I felt a great responsibility. I would be involved in this child's life. In whatever form. The day before the transplant surgery, Lily's grandparents visited the hospital. The in-laws I was meeting for the first time looked older and more tired than I'd expected. They looked at me with surprised expressions. "You're Lily's grandmother," said. "Michael's wife." "Yes," I answered. Lily's grandfather said. "We must apologize to you. We told Michael if he remarried, he couldn't see Lily. That was wrong." The grandmother also bowed her head. "In loving our granddaughter, we became blind. Michael didn't kill Sarah. But we couldn't accept that. We couldn't bear it without blaming someone." I looked at them. In their eyes were regret and sadness. "You love Lily, don't you?" I said. "Yes," the grandmother answered. "This child is the only memento left to us of our daughter." Then, I said. "From now on, let's all support Lily together. Let's put the past behind us." The grandparents nodded with tears. "Thank you," the grandmother said. "You're a kind person. I think Sarah would be grateful too." That night, Michael and I went out to the hospital rooftop. The night wind was cold, and the city lights were visible in the distance. "Tomorrow's the surgery," Michael said. "Yes," I answered. "Are you scared?" he asked. "I'm scared," I answered honestly. "But I have to do it." Michael held my hand. "Emily, I don't know how to thank you. You saved everything for me." I looked at Michael. I still didn't know what would happen to our future. But there was one thing I was certain of. "Family isn't just about blood connections," I said. "It's also something you choose." Michael nodded. "That's right," he said. "And you chose us." I looked up at the night sky. Stars were twinkling. A year later, we were in the park. Sophia and Lily were laughing and chasing each other. Both were running around energetically. Lily's hair, after post-transplant treatment, had started to grow again. Short, but with a healthy shine. The surgery was successful. 3 months after the transplant, Lily's body accepted my bone marrow and began producing new blood. The doctor called it a miracle. But I knew. This wasn't a miracle. It was the power of love. Michael sat next to me, watching our 2 daughters. He'd changed a lot over this year. He no longer carried secrets. He told me everything. About work, worries, joys, everything. Our relationship had also changed. Rebuilding trust that had nearly collapsed took time. We went to counseling. We fought. There were many nights we cried. But we didn't give up. When Lily was discharged from the hospital, she came to our house. At first just on weekends. Sometimes we had dinner with her grandparents too. It was awkward, but little by little, we became a real family. Sophia was the best big sister. She was kind to Lily, shared her toys, and played with her. "Daddy had 2 daughters all along," Sophia said. Those words brought us to tears. Now Lily officially lives with us. Her grandparents acknowledged that Michael is a good father. And that I could be a good mother too. Through joint custody, Lily goes between 2 homes. "Mommy, look!" Lily called. She'd found a large cherry blossom branch and was collecting petals with Sophia. I waved back. Over this year, I learned many things. That family isn't determined only by blood connections. That true bonds are formed by overcoming difficulties together. And the importance of forgiveness. Michael held my hand. "Thank you," he whispered. "Every day, he says that." "That's enough," I laughed. "You've already atoned enough." "No," Michael shook his head. "A lifetime won't be enough. You taught me what real family means." I kissed his cheek. "We taught each other," I said. "What it means to be family." Our 2 daughters came running up. "We're hungry," they both said at the same time. Michael and I looked at each other and laughed. Well, let's go home and have lunch, I said. What do you want to eat today? Pasta, Sophia said, and pizza, Lily said, and we laughed again. Let's make both, Michael suggested. Because today's a special day. Yes, today was a special day. 1 year since Lily's transplant. Her new birthday. And the day our new family began. On the way home, Lily walked holding my hand. Emily, she said. Can I call you Mom? I stopped and looked at Lily. Her eyes looked straight at me. Of course, I answered. I'd be honored. Lily showed a smile. Then she called me Mom. Those words filled my heart. When we got home, I started cooking with Michael in the kitchen. Sophia and Lily were playing in the living room. I could hear their laughter. This was our daily life. Not perfect, but filled with love. Past wounds had healed, and there was hope for the future. Family means laughing together, crying together, living together. And choosing each other and continuing to love. We became that kind of family.